Welcome to the Investors Corner and welcome to another episode where this week we welcome Andy Mead of Mead New Homes, man of 30 years experience within the new homes sales and marketing industry. He specifically wants to talk about the issues with planning and why that's strangling the new homes sector, where myself and Ian will also introduce some ideas around what can be done with new homes to increase prices and whether that can be transposed into the residential second-hand market. As ever, if you like what you hear, please do hit that subscribe button. Always send us a message if you've got someone that you would love to hear or someone from a specific industry you would love to hear on our podcast.
We've got Andy Mead from Mead New Homes this week, and on the Investors Corner we're going to get stuck into what is going on with the new homes world, what may happen in 2024 with the new homes world as well. In a couple of episodes ago, we actually had Lee Curtis from Kirtland on, and he was talking very much around some of the challenges that developers are having at the moment. And as we're talking to investors out there, I think it will interest people, because if you're buying a standard buy-to-let or you're looking to buy a couple of buy-to-lets, effectively a developer could be your competition in a couple of different ways. They could be from a rental point of view as a landlord. They could be from a purchase point of view as an investor as well. So this would be an interesting episode for anyone that wants to buy properties to rent at some point, or, as some people seem to be doing at the moment, Mike, could also be a smaller contractor, developer, tradie that's looking to actually purchase maybe a one-for-one or maybe an old house and turn it into a small block of flats as well. So going to really get stuck into new homes. First of all, how are you, Andy Mead?
I'm good, thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Second episode for you.
Yeah.
But many, many moons ago. When did we speak? You must have been in one of the first episodes. 2 years ago, I reckon it was.
It's scary how quickly time goes.
It does.
And how 1 week you're in 2021 and the next week you're in 2024. It's just like bizarre how quickly it goes.
One of the best takeaways from the last episode we did was when we were talking about new home sites being developed and the first opportunity for an investor to go and purchase the show home off the developer and then lease it back to them while the development is being built out, and effectively buy it at its lowest price because the phase is about to mature into what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I remember that vividly as one of the key takeaways. So would you still do that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, sale and leaseback is always a guaranteed 2-3 year rental with a tenant in there. Yeah. The tenant being the builder.
And they've got to keep it pretty tidy.
They're going to look, they're going to look after it. It's going to be, and then when in 75% of the cases they will redecorate it when they give it back. So it's definitely, if you can get on at the outset of a development, especially if it's a 2, 3, 4 year development, you've got that length of time for a guaranteed income, and usually they will pay a minimum of 6.5%.
Yeah,
as a yield.
I like that a lot. There was someone, or I was either talking to or watching, you might tell me this might be a TV show, but they were talking about, it might have been a podcast, another podcast. They had a bit of cash. They'd gone abroad. They wanted to buy the show flat. I think it was in Spain, somewhere like that. They wanted to buy the show flat. And what they realised with the show flat is it wasn't for sale, but they wanted it as it was. They just wanted it plug and play, all the furnishings, because they always look amazing, don't they, the show homes. And what they quickly decided is they could buy 10 of these properties off plan, turn them into show flat level kind of properties, and they would get like crazy more money than what they would have done if they'd have just put them through resi. So it does make me wonder sometimes with, when you look at the new homes developments, whether that is the way to actually do small boutique kind of new homes is stop selling them as vacant properties, start selling them as furnished properties. If you had 10 lovely family homes, there's developments all over the place where, you might have £10 million houses, or you're selling a site at the moment that's got 7 units. I think some of them are 2-bed terraces, 3-bed terraces, and some 3-bed or 4-bed detaches. Yep. I just wonder if those 7 units, if they'd furnished all of them with a bit of theme, what the GDV would be. Do you think they would have got drastically more?
Not so much. I don't think so much on houses, because predominantly people buying houses are ones that have already got their own properties.
Okay.
But I think on apartments, it's definitely worthwhile on apartments doing them as not so much pre-owned, but they do the furniture packs, and you have a level of furniture pack which you can choose, which we did a lot when I was working for a developer in London. There was gold, silver, and bronze level of furniture pack, which ranged from, I think back then it was between 7.5, 15, and 20 grand to furnish the whole flat. And that was everything: cutlery, dishwash, dish towels, furniture.
Just move in.
Just move straight in. So on the day of completion, we had an agreement with the company that supplied all the furniture that 2 days before completion, as long as it exchange contracts, 2 days before completion, they could go in and literally do everything. So hand the keys over, you're moving in, and then you literally plonk your suitcase down, your clothes down, and you're in.
Good to go. It moves me to, I guess, rental, just normal rentals as well. Why do you think landlords or more letting agents, normally from an advice point of view, typically advise just go vacant, just go unfurnished? But especially in some of the cities and things like that, I just wonder whether there is an opportunity to furnish some of these properties and actually have a maximum level of rental, because some of the prices achieved at the moment are unbelievable. But in certain apartments in particular, it does feel that you could really maximize. I mean, in America, look, from a real estate point of view, if we say they lead the way in terms of service levels and maximizing properties, you employ a real estate agent at X figure, they invest like 100 grand on your property to get you that extra £500,000.
Yeah.
And the same applies when you look at, some of the sort of more entrepreneurial hotspots, your Dubais and things like that. A lot of these properties are furnished to a very high spec. But in the UK, we're kind of vacant boxes in new homes, vacant boxes in rentals as well.
I think with developers that they've, and I think this is not just developers, but it's as a nation, we've if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got.
Yeah.
And there's, and in all fairness, look, the housing market in the last 10, 15 years has been very, very prevalent, apart from the last 2 years or last year. So why would they spend the money to do that when there's no actual history or proof that it works? But looking at other countries' models, they do work.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. But I think if you're looking at houses, I think if you're doing it as a furnished package, you're then maybe eliminating people that are looking to rent a place that have already got their own furniture. I don't know, Mike, you tell me. You're more
the rental thing. I think there's a few barriers to doing it. Firstly, there used to be a really good tax break for having a furnished property where you could write off part of the value of the furniture every year, which made it slightly worthwhile. You used to be able to hold a bigger deposit against it, both of which have been taken away from landlords. So you might spend £15,000 furnishing a flat, standard 2-bedroom flat, and you can only hold a £1,500 deposit, which leaves you at a bit of a risk. If you're getting maybe £100, £200 a month over market value, it's going to take you 10 years to pay for that furniture. That furniture is not going to last 10 years. In a rental property, it could only last 6 months. I've had a sofa smashed down the middle in a rented property of mine. Don't know how they did it. Didn't ask a question, to be completely honest. But
splitting up. Split the sofa.
Fortunately, it wasn't a really, really expensive piece of furniture. But that's why a lot of landlords don't do it, is because of the risk. Certainly, they look better. Certainly, yes, you can achieve a premium because people buy a lifestyle. I think where the American system has it is people tend to move on to the higher end, the TV sort of level world of American real estate. People tend to move first and then leave their house empty for a real estate agent to go and max out the value.
Stage it properly,
you're bridging finance and that kind of thing, or however they finance the next move, whether it's cash or bridging, is much more normal than it is in the UK. Whereas in the UK, you're sat there with your 2 kids in the house trying to sell it, so you can't shift everything out to move new stuff in. But the investment, if you did that in the UK, a lot of the time it would be worth it, right? A lot of the time we walk into houses and go, guy, if you just spent 2 grand, you'd probably make 25 on this house.
We saw that block, didn't we, in Reading recently, central Reading, right next to the train station, and I just think of that particular block where it's got all of the, communal areas, the family areas, the home workspace areas. It's got its own cinema, gym, I think it had as well. Underground car park. That for me is the prime sort of type of property where I could think, if that landlord or developer in this case was selling those apartments, if they were all sold with the furniture packs, and you put 10 grand's worth of packs in, you wouldn't probably pay 10 grand across that amount of units. You'd probably pay way less than that. But let's just say 10 grand, you're easily going to get 30, 40 grand more on each plot for the way that they look, for the type of tenant and buyer, because those buyers are Middle East type buyers, and they've come over from different countries effectively, haven't they? So it's normal to them because the buyer is a foreign buyer, not the way that we've always known.
Definitely. I think for the overseas market, it's a perfect model.
So maybe it's more a city,
a
city that takes the stance on it.
If you've got the opportunity to buy a lifestyle, and I see that depending on the developer, people will spend more to buy a Barclay home than another developer, for example, because you're buying into a lifestyle. So you could push that further to buying into the Barclay Furnished lifestyle, just to pick one developer out of the air. I think there's definitely mileage in it, because I've sold new buildings, new apartment buildings, and I've seen people chase the show flat around the development.
100%,
It's always the first one to get sold, and then they move it, and that's the next one to get, and the developer gets frustrated by it, which almost is, like you say, is the wrong mentality. Maybe do it to all of them and pitch your price point a little bit better. But how would a surveyor react to that if you're outperforming the market to a white box next door?
Yeah, definitely. Because the surveyor will invariably, they won't look at what's been sold on that development. They will look at other developments. So I think when we were selling the apartments in Slough, and then said Spain, then selling the apartments in Slough,
Similar,
similar area, begins with an S. The surveyors, they would only take one comparison from that development. The rest would have to be within
external
close proximity. So which frustrates me, because within any development you can build your own market.
It's got its own identity, 100%.
And that's what you're doing, and that's what we do as Mead New Homes, Avocado Property. We will always build a development, a lifestyle within that development. So you're buying within that. And the reason you're buying that is because it's better than the one down the road. And you're going to pay a little bit extra for that. But if the surveyor's comparing the one down the road, you're not comparing apples with apples. You're comparing apples with eggs. So it's building that lifestyle, and that's what you need to do with any development, especially if it's a 20, 30, 40 plus scheme. You need to build that lifestyle.
And one block that could be quite literally there, the other side of that wall, could be just totally different to that block. And you're trying to force a comparable from it when you've got 60 on this block, and it makes no sense. I think with surveyors, they're probably, to answer a question, I think surveyors would do it the same way they do everything, which just depends how they wake up in the morning. Pretty much, to be honest with you, what mood they're in that morning. If they've had a good weekend or a bad weekend, that's a risky business. But anyway, going back to the rental contract, you mentioned about sofa. You mentioned about, obviously, if you're letting a property furnished, why can a contract not be written to say that if a tenant was to damage a dining room chair or any piece of furniture that's in there, the tenant actively breaks it. They put a fist through a door, they scratch the dining room table quite obviously intentionally, or they, like I say, they're playing WWE with their friend and they smash a chair to pieces. Is it still called WWE? WWF?
I've got no idea.
It's not on my Sky plan, to be honest.
Funnily enough, it's not. Watching men wrestling in pants isn't my sort of idea of entertainment.
I've had a funny morning.
Can't wait for the reel on that one.
But going back to it, on contracts, why can't it be written in that if the tenant actively damages the contract, is not wear and tear, that they are responsible to replace the chair?
Well, effectively, you can't ask for new for old. And it's your word against them to a certain extent.
It's proven it wasn't done deliberately as well.
Exactly. I sat on it, it collapsed.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends how heavy you are to how believable that is. Effectively, the general scheme of things is that
furnishings and consumable items have a lifespan. So if it's said to have a 7 to 10 year lifespan, and it's 5 years old, realistically, as a landlord, you can only really claim half of the value of that item if it needs replacing. Because if you're going to sell it, it would only have half of the value. So the same goes for carpets, because they're thought of to last around about 10 years. If it's damage in a wall, now the wall wouldn't expect to need rebuilding in 10 years' time, but then the decoration, you're expecting to decorate every 2 to 3 years. So there's various sort of percentages and equations that if you took it to a dispute, that it would be worked down. But a broadly swathing, it is stacked in the tenant's favour a little bit too much to stop landlords from just claiming stuff. And before tenants' deposits were protected, I saw the absolute opposite. I worked in a Reading market where landlords would just go, tenants wrecked it, I'm keeping the deposit.
Yeah, so it's
and you just drew a line under it. The tenant would go, yeah, there was no recourse. Yeah. So well, show us the proof. Well, I've already decorated it over the weekend. I'll have you. Okay. Right. And there's very little you could do about it. So it swung from one way to almost a little bit way past the other. But I understand why the protection's in place, because it is the tenant's money. No one else's until it's not.
Yeah.
It's a bit like being innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah. Yeah. It's difficult, but I think as times evolve, there's a place where this will happen. That's why I asked the question, new homes. How is the new homes market through the eyes of a developer at the moment, Andy?
Tough. Very tough.
What's their pain points?
Their pain point is planning. Their pain point is being able to predict what they're going to build and what they've got in their approved planning pipeline for the next 2-3 years.
It's a lot of P's.
I was going to say, can you do that 10 times?
No, I can't. No. Once was a struggle. So there's difficulty across the whole of the planning aspect of developers, and that's what's holding everything up. And it's just,
is that time or price or both?
Time. Price has never really been an issue in terms of getting the planning. It's more of.
I mean in terms of getting the right price for the right planning. As in, are people overpaying on land still? No, that's okay.
No. Purely for the fact that if we'll talk about land now. So if you're driving down the high street and there's a board saying land for sale, full planning approved, and it's been there for a week, it's overpriced.
I'm seeing land and development plots on Rightmove at the moment, which doesn't happen.
No, it just doesn't. If you go back 18 months, 2 years, if a plot of land became available, it would never hit the open market.
Yeah, it was gone.
Because the land agents would know Bert from Bob's Developers or somebody else that was looking for that development. So therefore, they would get onto them. So it would never ever need to go to the market. The problem we've got now is material costs have risen 25-30% in the last 2 years. Labour costs have gone up. Labour availability has gone down. So there's less people. House prices in the last year have gone down, what we're saying, 7.5%?
Give or take.
As an average.
Yeah.
So something's got to give. And unfortunately, what's got to give is the land value, because that's where it all starts from. And builders don't build for free. They want to make a profit.
Not forgetting, obviously, on top of that, interest rates have gone through the metaphorical roof. That if you're sat on a development site, chances are you borrowed to buy it rather than just buy it with cash.
Yeah, so developers are now a lot more, rather than taking the punt on the site 3-4 years ago because the market was rising, the interest rates were fairly low. That's not happening now. They want belt and braces to be sure that what they're buying, that they're going to build out and it's going to be ready to be sold in. Average build time is 9 months to a year from getting the planning. That what they're buying at now, they're not going to be making a loss on. Now, there's always a crystal ball and there's an element there. So there's got to be a bit of bravery in buying a building site, building a plot of land. But they do their own due diligence. So regardless of what I say to the landowner as my opinion of a value, the developer that we speak to will always go out and do his own due diligence independently. And what we're finding now with a lot of developers is that they now won't speak to certain agents because they know that the land they're being given to them is just so overpriced that the agents have over-egged the value to get the instruction. They're just not selling. So if you see a site that's got planning permission, that's on the market, it's on Rightmove, that's got a board outside it, the chances are the landowner either wants too much money or has been advised that they're too much money.
So is the bottleneck in land stock, developers that have bought land stock that are sitting on them because planning hasn't gone through, or units where they're actually building them out and they can't sell them? There's normally a bottleneck somewhere in one of those three layers.
Yeah, the bottleneck is actual planning. Is actually the planning.
Is the actual planning.
So if you go,
so they own the land, they're just struggling to punch it through at the moment.
Yeah. So the ones where they own the land and they haven't got the planning on, they're the ones that are struggling.
Right.
The ones that are available, that have got planning on them, that are on the market, that the guy who owns it, either he's not a builder or he doesn't want to build it because he doesn't see the benefit of building it, but trying to sell it for a premium is not happening.
Yeah.
So, but the main hold up is with the planning portal, the planning issues, planning situation at the moment is just across every region is just ridiculous. Every developer, when I speak to developers in Manchester, I spoke to a guy who's looking to build somewhere in Leeds, Liverpool, London. He said the whole system is just shot to pieces.
The whole country is
struggling. So it's all across the board, and it's, when you're looking at planning should be for well-being, not just growth.
Mm.
So well-being, we mean well-being for the area. So if you're in a town, so let's say Bracknell, for example, what's to stop us extending that by a mile radius? So you've got the infrastructure already, you've got the road structure, and if you just put that planning outside by a mile radius, you could get so much more development within that area. And if you drive outside of Bracknell, going towards Maidenhead, going towards London, the amount of open area and open space. So we're not overdeveloped as an area here. And I drove up to Stoke, and it was just amazing how, when I drove up to Leeds quite a lot, because being from Leeds, but driving up to Stoke, it's just incredible how much open space there is as a nation we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got all these NIMBYs saying you can't build it because we're overdeveloped. But as a nation, we're not. I think there's only something like less than 20% of our country is developed.
I was showing one of the avocado partners how to use ChatGPT, and we were talking about a property market crash and why a property market crash can potentially happen. We asked AI, what were the top 5 reasons why that may happen? And I think number 4 was too many properties for sale. And we kind of all just laughed at it because there is such a shortage of property in the UK. And we know that because we can go back to, even 20 odd years ago, where they basically said, we're going to build at this rate annually as a government. And they've never hit that benchmark for 20 years. And then I think the reports that came out, it was pre-COVID, it must have been around 2017, 2018, highlighted that the deficit since 2002, when they basically put that kind of marker in play, was that the country at that moment in time, this is 5 years ago, was short the equivalent of a Birmingham city in the country. So there was a whole Birmingham city shortage of properties to hit the quota that obviously hasn't been hit. And your evidence is in what you see there. I drove down from Harrogate all in one hit on a Friday night, and probably 90% of my journey down the motorway was just fields either side of me.
Yeah, it's planning, and I get the planning laws and I get the planning regulations. They need to be for the community. It needs to be a benefit to the community, not to the developer, not to the council. It needs to be a benefit to the community. And invariably, if you're going to extend a community, then you need to put an additional school in there. You need to put more shops in there. You need to put maybe a different road structure in there. But all of that will benefit the community, because then there'll be more money coming into the community from the new houses. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense for the planning problems to be eradicated. And Keir Starmer came out last week with what he wants to do, and he's very much yes, I am a YIMBY. Yes, in my backyard, and he wants to hit the quota of 300,000 houses per year.
Mm.
Now, he's got ways that he says he wants to do it. Now, when you look at what he says, you don't actually think he's talking nonsense, which normally he does. You know, you look at what he does, and it's not in my opinion, it's not a difficult fix.
Mm.
But the problem you have, and the problem you're going to have, and as much as I hate to say this, up until the next election, there are going to be a lot of councils that will be refusing planning for the wrong reasons, because they want to stay on the side of their constituents rather than the side of the benefit of the growth. So if there's a planning application in Bracknell, the chances are planning in Bracknell over the next 6 months is going to be very devoid, because we've got the election coming up next year and they want to win the votes. And they think by winning votes, by refusing planning, is a way of winning votes.
Yeah, I think it's a really tough one. I mean, there's a great local example where we all live. I think Bracknell has the capacity for a lot of extra homes because of the way the town is laid out. I think Wokingham next door does not have the capacity because of the way the town's laid out. That's just my personal opinion on it, but both towns have seen a lot of new building going on over the last 5 years, because there was probably about 20 years where very little was done. So it's all suddenly come through, like you said, that sort of bottlenecking of it. My problem comes with the whole system is that the infrastructure seems to come after the houses, not before. And that's always been my problem with it, is you can build 1,000 houses, but equally forget to build the community centre and the local shops and the relief road until afterwards. And I'm sure it's all money related.
Yeah, there's no profit in a relief road, is there?
No, it's frustrating for the. I think that's what frustrates the residents.
Yeah,
that the road and the infrastructure should come first, not last.
Yeah, well, I've been talking to some guys down in Southampton. They've got a massive development going in Southampton, and I went down to see them three months ago. And they've already got the infrastructure in. They've got the road in. So they've got this road. It's like a road to nowhere. But, you know, in time, that's going to be.
Yeah.
So they've done it a little bit in reverse. Is they've done all of the commercial work at the forefront of the development.
It's less surprise for people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
You'd like to think in that point as well.
But what the residents of the local area can see is when that relief road opens, there's going to be a massive benefit to the community.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it's there.
It's not going to be a strain on the community for 8 to 10 years. Building 1,000 houses normally takes 8 to 10 years, and it's a strain to the community until those things are finished. Where we are in Wokingham, they've only just opened the northern relief road. The southern, I think about 5,000 houses have been built. It goes down to a roundabout and stops.
Yeah. So
all of that traffic gets fed through a town centre that was built in the 16th century for carts, not for Chelsea tractors. No. So it's, you know, I can kind of see why people get frustrated, because the whole, and I think that it should be a council based thing. It should be okay, well, we'll, you know, bit of tit for tat. We'll give you your planning, but you can have your planning when the infrastructure's in, to see people invest first. Like you've seen in Southampton, you can see the investments going in, so it's okay to then build the rest of the profitable bits.
Yeah, and I think there's got to be a balance between the nasty planners and the nasty developers.
Yeah,
and the nasty developers, and you know, I've seen it on my development where I live in Wokingham. You know, it's still, as was that 7 years I've been there now, and that still hasn't been handed over to the local authority, because there's still works ongoing that the builders need to do. Now
it's fun for conveyancers as well.
Massively, yeah. but they finished building 2 years ago. So yeah, but the council still haven't adopted that estate. So it's just, and that's, you know, is that down to the big nasty developer not fulfilling his Section 106, or is that down to the local authority saying, "Oh no, we don't need to do that just yet. We'll leave it for another year."
It's funny in this country how, you know, we attach those sort of titles to the nasty planner or the nasty developer and stuff. Effectively, as soon as someone starts doing quite well,
massively, yeah.
In this country, we just sort of want to tear them apart. Whereas you look at the US or somewhere like that, and they're championing success.
It should be, you know.
It makes it quite difficult, doesn't it? Because you're constantly at a battle with the culture of the British community to kind of go, well, we're trying to We're trying to support. You have an issue with prices. As estate agents, you know, if we look at it and they say, well, it's your fault. We don't actually care what the prices are. We're just trying to make a living. So we need turnover to do that. We don't, whether a house is worth 400,000 or 300,000 actually doesn't make a difference to us. If we can sell 2 at 300, we would much rather do that than 1 at 400. So all we're trying to do is facilitate the demand in the same way the developers are trying to do the same, because the councils need to do it, because everyone is frustrated by the drastic increase of prices over the last 40 years in the country. It's kind of that full circle that...
Yeah, but I think the increase of properties, the increase of values, is because there's a lack of properties.
Well, that's exactly my point. That's
so we're going around this. It's like a vicious circle that we're getting lambasted for values being so high, yet we're not going to address the problem by building more houses to bring the demand down.
And it's the same with landlords. It's the same with, you know, kind of residential landlords. You know, that everyone for the last 10 years has kind of bashed landlords, you know, especially tenants and first-time buyers. You know, they take our properties, they're forcing the prices out. And then they've made it really difficult for landlords to buy properties. They've started to exit and, you know, they're buying less, which is what the plan was. And the rental prices are now double what they were 10 years ago, typically speaking. So now tenants can't become first-time buyers because they're spending too much money on rent. So it's like this counter. Sometimes you kind of need to like not artificially mess with a process, and it feels like that's where we're at. The same with council
housing. It's like councils should supply council housing. Unfortunately, councils can't afford to maintain council houses. So they get given a load of houses, and then in 40, 50 years, they're all falling down because they haven't had the budget to maintain them like a private landlord or a private owner would. That's just a fact of life, because the council isn't funded enough. Mm-hmm. Do you want your taxes to go up? To fund that?
Yeah.
No, of course you don't. So no one ever wins.
No.
Like it's that continuous circle of issues.
Yeah, but I think you are right. We do need to champion success, and that's the biggest bugbear I've got for this country, is that as a nation, we build people up to knock them down. In any industry, whether it's a football, whether it's a company doing well, whether it's anything, we build them up to knock them down.
Yeah, it is a shame, because I think, again, when you look at the bigger picture, if there is the big person in the ivory tower that's driving a Rolls Royce and flying first class everywhere, typically speaking, there's a job at the bottom of that hierarchy of staff that's for your daughter or son when they leave university or college, that's going to get them a foot on the career path to whatever their success journey looks like. So sometimes we have to review the bigger picture. Slightly off topic here, and we'll talk opinions here rather than facts, but we were talking about development. Has anyone driven into Farnborough recently and seen the development in the middle of the roundabout? The first roundabout you arrive in Farnborough has an actual development.
Is it actually
Savoy House that has been built there on a roundabout?
It looks a bit paused, but yeah, on a roundabout. Yeah,
I've not seen it. Whereabouts?
As near the station, right by Farnborough Station.
So you go past Farnborough Station on the right. The first roundabout
over the bridge. That funny roundabout. That's really, really difficult.
Two
to
blocks,
navigate.
two blocks.
It used to be the pub, the Flocken.
I think it used to be a pub. Yes.
Flocken something.
It blows my mind that there's still trouble with planning on some of these developments when there is a 5-story, 40-unit block of flats that's just been created in the middle of a roundabout, and it's a busy roundabout as well.
Yeah, if you don't know where you're going, it's a bit hairy, isn't it?
Yeah. It blows my mind. But anyway, why does that happen? Brown paper bags?
I wouldn't even like to comment on brown paper bags.
I presume the pub and some other buildings were there before the roundabout, and therefore you get to replace what was already there.
If there is any, go and take a photo of it with your drone, and then if there is ever one, fly it from here. If there's ever any declined planning permission for one of your clients, just send a photo of that roundabout with a block of flats on it and say, "How is this approved?" And that is not.
But then there is. Invariably, and if I spoke to 10 developers would agree to me that there is no logic to a refused planning application.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
And I think last time we spoke about this, we mentioned about the Jeremy Clarkson thing. He was trying to put a path on his farm, and it got refused. He was trying to do something else on his farm, and it got refused.
Yeah,
and it was just how the councillors and the planners feel that day is very much like a surveyor. Go back to the beginning of the conversation. It's how they feel when they wake up in the morning. It's just there's no rhyme or reason to an appeal or a refusal or an acceptance of a planning application.
It does feel like the opinion-led decision-making process somehow needs to be removed from the planning process and make it more, this is the rule book, this is the playbook. It's either in or it's out, and then everyone knows where they stand. And I know that's easier said than done, but it does feel like it's too based on the Jeremy Clarkson, farm show is a very prime example of something that, because he's Jeremy Clarkson, everything's being declined. But all he's trying to do from a well-being point of view for the community and for the farm is improve it. It's outrageous.
Yeah.
It is outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, we go back to the, when we talk about well-being, not just growth. Yeah, okay, fine. He was looking to grow his business, but the well-being for 5 other farmers that he was bringing into that to buy their produce was massive.
Mm-hmm.
So there needs to be a more measured approach to it, rather than just saying that's not going in there because I don't want it to go in there.
Yeah,
it's a well-being approach, and it's not as I say, it's not just growth. It's you need to be looking at the well-being of the whole community and how that's going to impact and benefit the community.
So let's throw a crystal ball on the table. What happens next year? Obviously, we're talking elections, we're talking planning issues, we're talking developers, housing market, rental prices. What do you see from the eyes of someone that supports developers with the marketing of their properties and sources them buyers? What do you see happening in the market in 2024 for developers?
I think the government have got to do something post-Christmas in terms of schemes to try and get people back onto the ladder. I think there was talk at the weekend about extending the mortgage guarantee scheme, but I don't think that'll be enough. There needs to be, especially with the interest rates as they are now, there needs to be, a lot of people knocked the Help to Buy scheme, but it helped over 370,000 people get on the housing market. Yes, it inflated prices, but then we go back to the situation was that the stock wasn't there for all the buyers that wanted to buy. So it did push prices up. Mm-hmm. So the Help to Buy scheme, I think, would be a massive benefit to the housing market. Planning, more than anything else, has got to be sorted out. And that's whether with a blue government in or a red government in.
Pink government?
I was going to say a yellow government, but I can't see them getting in. But then you never know what's going to happen. So yeah, I think whoever goes in and whatever goes in or stays in, and whatever their manifesto is they need to stick to it for the planning, because it's not just the planning, it's the wider economy that the housing market does benefit. Mm-hmm. So they need to sort the planning out, and that's we've talked about this for the last 18 months. I think that it's a broken system. Unfortunately, I haven't got the voice to change that system, but I can highlight it. And that's what we need to do, is that the system is broken, the system needs to change.
And I think where we talk about those densities around towns, we talk about, Bracknell's got the capacity, Wokingham probably doesn't because of its traffic issues in the town centre and things like that. But when you talk about going 5 miles outside of these towns and putting some 12, 15 family home sites together, it just that has to be something they focus on. Yeah. It needs to happen in the country desperately. If we don't need 42 flats in the middle of a roundabout in a town centre. we need 15 family homes 2 miles out of the town centre. That's a 10-minute drive into the town centre, because that's the ripple effect that we need to see. But at the moment, because the developers can only make the land deals work on the profit margins inside these core functions, 1/4 mile radius of train stations, etc., that's a real issue for the market if something doesn't drastically change with the planning. And it all goes back to making that appealing site 15 units, 2 miles outside of Warfield or Bracknell or Wokingham or Farnborough, wherever it may be, in a really nice location with a nice country pub that's walking distance for people that don't want to be walking distance to a Waitrose or a Co-op or a Tesco's or whatever, and they don't want to drive home in the middle of the town centre traffic. They want to be raising a family in what we would call more country living. That's actually
which isn't then going to affect the people that say not in my backyard because it's further out, but then it's going to benefit those people that are saying not in my backyard because when their kids want to move, where they're going to buy.
Exactly. Yeah. And it ripples out and it kind of gets the momentum going with the market as well. So maybe if someone's listening from the planning or from the government scenario, from councils, let's have a chat.
It's 5 to 11, they won't be up yet.
Well, the podcast goes at 7 a.m. But we can maybe help with some conversations. But it's very insightful podcast, Andy, and thank you for coming on and talking about it openly. And let's see what happens over the course of the next 6 to 9 months with a lot of things due to happen with the market. We've seen the last 9 months. We know the struggles it's had. We know what it's done. We know that transactions are going to be down 300, maybe 350,000 units this year in comparison to a kind of normal 1.2 million average. So there is a place for first-time buyers, investors, second-time buyers to be buying new homes to improve that transaction quality so that these quotas can get hit. It is needed, whether you like it or not, it is needed for the generations that are to come. So
massively, massively.
Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Why have we made the Investors Corner podcast, Ian?
I think online at the moment there is just way too much noise, waffle and nonsense. Everyone's got an agenda. So the goal was to make a podcast for people that want to invest money in property or other areas where there's no waffle, there's no nonsense, there's no agenda. It's opinion led, but it's an honest opinion. And it might not be the right answer, but we're going to share it.
So on the podcast, we're going to supply people with access to mortgage brokers, financial advisors, planning experts, development consultants, everything around the property industry and the wider fields.
Yeah, so if you're looking at investing in the future, you know that just having an income from your employer or from your business is not enough to give you the life that you want down the line. We're going to hopefully give you some of those answers that will give you the solutions you need for the future.
So please hit the subscribe button. The more subscribers we get, better guests that we can get on and the more people that we can reach. So hit subscribe.